Hey, Abby, ready for a story?
Yeah. I got a story right here.
Today we have
Curious
Curious George Goes Camping.
Oh, s'mores.
Yep, we can talk about that later. Abby and I are snuggled up in our sleeping bag to read you this story. Curious George Goes Camping. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. This weekend, George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, had special plans. They were going camping. Do you think they had a cabin like this?
Yeah.
They might. We'll have to find out. Camping is when you stay in a cabin or a tent and you sleep outside. Do you want to read a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
At the campsite, the man with the yellow hat unpacked their gear while George looked at all the tents. He saw tents for big families and one just the right size for a puppy.
Good. Hey, I heard a new word there. Gear. George, the man with the yellow hat, unpacked their gear, and then they started to set up.
Wait,
Gear.
isn't that like, don't they mean the camping gear?
What's camping gear?
Like a tent or cabin.
Tent would be
Sleeping
camping
bag.
gear. Sleeping bag would be camping gear.
Where's
A lantern would be camping gear. A canteen would be camping gear.
that? This lantern actually.
Yep. A portable
lantern's cool.
fork and spoon would be camping gear. But you can have gear for other things too. If I was going to make s'mores, I might need marshmallows, graham crackers,
And
Chocolate.
first.
and one last piece of gear, a roasting stick. So gear are the things you need to do something. The equipment.
I'm roasting them off.
You might have soccer gear if you play soccer. That would be your shin guards, your cleats, and your ball. So gear is the equipment that you need to do an activity. Let's keep reading. There were even tents on wheels. Would you like to help me set up our tent, George? The man asked. Of course, I'm sure George wants to. George was happy to help. It would not be hard to set up a tent, he thought. But it wasn't easy. George, why don't you fill our bucket with water at the pump? His friend suggested. We'll need it by our campfire later when we roast marshmallows. Now, these are not real marshmallows. They're toy ones.
But they're actually fluffy.
But they are fluffy.
And they actually smell like a marshmallow.
What does a marshmallow smell like? What do you think? Comment below.
Smells good.
Marshmallows.
I'm roast.
George loves marshmallows. He couldn't wait to try them toasted. Now, don't wander off and get into trouble, the man warned. But George did not hear him. He was already gone.
Is he getting into trouble?
Does he always get into trouble? What do we know about Curious George?
He's curious, but when he's curious, you can't get into trouble.
He gets into trouble, yep. He's a monkey. He lives with the man with the yellow hat. There are lots of stories and even TV shows about him. So he's probably going to get into some kind of trouble. At the pump, George worked the handle up and down. Soon his bucket was full. On the way back down the trail, he saw a family packing up. George watched a girl pour a bucket of water over her campfire. The fire sizzled out. What would that sound like?
Sizzling?
Yeah,
Like-
sizzled out. Make the sound. Good, let's do it together. Pretend we have a bucket.
Oh, I remember this book.
Pour the bucket on the fire. Can you think of something else that sizzles? What do you think, Abby?
Water, maybe?
Tell me more.
Like boiling water?
Kind of.
Or like maybe when you're cooking sausage.
There you go. More like cooking sausage or bacon. It sizzles in the pan. A lot of people think of bacon as something that sizzles. It also means usually something goes hot.
What is
George thought that looked like fun. It's a lantern. He poured his bucket of water on the next campfire. "Hey," yelled the camper, "we weren't finished with that yet." The camper began to chase George, but George didn't mean to cause trouble. Now he only wanted to hide. He ran into the forest as fast as he could, but the camper's footsteps followed close behind. George ran faster and faster. The footsteps came closer and closer until suddenly they were passing George. Why, it was not the camper chasing George now. It was a deer. What fun to run with a deer. Forgetting all about the camper and the marshmallows, George ran after the deer. But a little monkey cannot run as fast as a deer in the woods. Before long, George was lost and all alone. He felt tired and stopped to rest. At first, he was worried. He was very far from camp, but there were lots of other animals to keep him company. He saw a lizard sunning on a rock and a squirrel chattering in the tree. Then he saw the tail of a black and white kitty peeking out from under a bush. See it? See it?
Yeah.
A black and white kitty.
That's not a kitty.
Do you know what it is? I think Abby knows.
Why?
George was curious. Would the kitty like to play? George gently pulled the kitty out. Uh-oh, what's going to happen next?
I know.
Abby, what's your prediction?
That he's going to get sprayed because it isn't a kitty.
Uh-oh, it's a
skunk.
Abby was right. Did you get that? But it was not a kitty. It was a skunk, and it was scared. The skunk lifted its tail and sprayed. Whew! The spray smelled awful. The animals tried to get away. George wanted to get away too, but he could not. The smell was all over him. How would he ever get rid of that awful smell, he wondered. Too bad he could not take a bath in the woods. George will try all kinds of things to get that smell out. What kinds of things do you think might work to get that yucky smell out? Think, think, think.
Well,
You have any ideas, Abby?
tomato juice or tomato soup, because I heard that gets the smell out.
It could. Yeah, what are other ways that we can get clean?
Washing, but
Take
what if that shower, but that wouldn't really help.
Right, but that's one way we could
Yeah.
get clean. We could take a shower, take a bath. He could even use baby wipes. He could go jump in a pond. I wonder if any of those will work.
One of those.
Let's go see.
He does.
Too bad he could not take a bath in the woods. But then George had an idea. He could wash the smell off in the creek.
So that's like a pond. A pond.
George jumped into the cold water. He splashed and scrubbed, but he was still smelly. And now he was wet, too. But what could he do? George thought and thought. If he climbed up a tree to dry off, would the smell blow away?
But
No. The book says
no.
no. Even dry.
Dry and high in the tree. George did not smell better. Poor George. He wished he hadn't wandered so far from camp. He wished he were roasting marshmallows with his friend. Suddenly, George heard footsteps heading towards him. Something was coming.
Something was coming. It was the forest animals, but they ran right by him. They had seen something scary, and George did too. What was it, Abby?
Smoke.
Yep, show us
From
again.
the
Point
fire.
to it again with your roaster. See it? I wonder where that came from. They had seen something scary, and George saw it too. It was a fire. Why don't you read, Abby?
George had gotten
Nice and loud.
into trouble for putting out one fire, but this fire wasn't in the campground. This was an emergency. Quickly, George climbed down the tree and grabbed his bucket. He scooped it full of water in the creek. Of water in the creek. Then, being careful to not spill, he climbed back up and swung off a branch to branch through the trees.
So he has his bucket and he's moving through the trees.
Like monkeys do.
When George got close enough to the fire, He reached down and poured the water on the flames. Out went the fire with a big hiss. What would that sound like? Oh, that sounds like a word that we learned today. What's that word, Abby?
Hiss.
Sizzling. Say it again with me.
Sizzling.
And what does it sound like?
He actually did put out a fire.
He did, and it sounded like this. Hiss. Sizzling. Just then, George's friend rushed out of the forest with a ranger. George, he called, I was afraid you would be here. It's a good thing you were here, George, the ranger said. We saw smoke from the campground, but you put this fire out just in time. George was glad to help, and the man with the yellow hat was glad to see that George was safe. But he had a funny look on his face. Why do you think he had a funny look on his face when he was close to George?
Because he knew George ran off after he told him, but George was already ran off, so he didn't know.
When he got close to George, he got a funny look on his face.
Oh, because of the skunk spraying him.
Mm-hmm. Good job, guys. Did you get that? George, he said, what is that smell? Show me your best stinky smell face. Good one, Abby. Poor George. Back at the campsite, George's friend helped him get rid of the awful smell.
What did they use?
After a strange bath in tomato juice, George looked and smelled fine. Then the man with the yellow hat invited the ranger to cook dinner with them over their own small campfire. Fires can be nice if you're careful, said the ranger. George agreed, especially for roasting marshmallows. We have some pretend marshmallows here, but if you have marshmallows at home, maybe you can put them together with some chocolate and some graham crackers and use a microwave with a grown-up and melt those a little bit. All right, just like Curious George, we went camping and read our story today. Thanks for helping me today, Abby.
Okay.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.
Oh, Mom, you forgot to tell him in the next video.